talk about Chris Paul because Chris Paul just recently scored 41 points in a closeout Game 6 versus the Los Angeles Clippers. He led all scorers in that game, and that Game 6 performance from Chris Paul was arguably the best performance of his NBA career, considering the magnitude and the stakes that were in place in that game. Get a trip to the NBA Finals, or potentially the Clippers would force a Game 7, and if the Clippers were to win Game 7, that'd be another blown 3-1 lead on Chris Paul's resume. And obviously, Chris Paul has a great opportunity to win a championship this year. He's playing in his first ever NBA Finals. He's playing the NBA for 16 seasons. It's been a long time coming for Chris Paul. This is one of, if not the best team he's ever played on. This Phoenix Suns team. This team is very, very talented from top to bottom. So Chris Paul has a legitimate chance to win an NBA Finals MVP and legitimately a championship. So today, I want to talk about what would a championship mean for Chris Paul's legacy. A guy that many people consider one of the greatest point guards of all time, one of the best players of his era. Is he on LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard's level? No, not quite, but he's up there definitely. I want to talk about what it's going to mean for his legacy if he were to win a championship, because if Chris Paul doesn't win a championship this year, he's probably never going to win a championship in his career, because this is the best opportunity he's going to get, okay? There's been some injuries in the playoffs. The Suns are really good. They're here right now. You may never get another opportunity, okay? Now, when it comes to Chris Paul, if he wins the Phoenix Suns the NBA championship, he will forever be remembered in NBA history. I know that's kind of a cliche statement, but see, a big reason why the Toronto Raptors are discussing today is because, well, they finally won a championship a couple of years ago, led by Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is a big reason why the Raptors are even thought about today. No one was thinking about the Toronto Raptors a couple of years ago. They were made fun of. They were a laughing joke until they won a championship, okay? People forget that Karl Malone was a two-time league MVP. He's the second all-time leading scorer as far as career points behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as we speak today. But people forget just how great Karl Malone was because, well, he never won a championship. And that's really no fault of his own. Obviously, he wasn't super clutch in the NBA Finals, versus Michael Jordan and the crew. But anytime you lose to Michael Jordan, you shouldn't be too ashamed. But yeah, Karl Malone, great, all-time great player. But people forget about how great he was because he never won a championship. Same thing with Charles Barkley. Same thing with Allen Iverson. I've been seeing some terrible, and I mean terrible, opinions on Twitter about Allen Iverson. I literally saw a photo and a tweet the other day that said, Allen Iverson or Kyrie Irving, who's the better player? It's obviously Allen Iverson, and it ain't even close, okay? Allen Iverson won a league MVP. He's one of the top 5 scorers of all time. He led his team to an NBA Finals, but because he didn't win that NBA Finals versus Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal and the Los Angeles Lakers, people forget just how cold-blooded and how great Allen Iverson is. Even James Harden right now. I don't think people realize how great James Harden has been in his career because he hasn't won a championship. You could talk about football. Dan Marino never won a championship, and he's not being talked about enough, in my opinion, as far as all-time great quarterbacks. And not to mention, if Chris Paul leads this Phoenix Suns team to an NBA championship, he's going to be in the conversation for greatest Phoenix Sun of all time. I know Charles Barkley is great. I know the Suns have had some great players go through their team and things like that, but Chris Paul is going to be on that short list of greatest Phoenix Suns of all time. You can make the argument that if Chris Paul wins a championship, it will lock him down potentially as a top 5 point guard of all time, When you talk about the Allen Iversons, the Jason Kidds of the world, the Steve Nashes of the world. If Chris Paul were to win an NBA Finals MVP, he'd have something that Allen Iverson doesn't have. He'd have something that Jason Kidd doesn't have. He'd have something that Steve Nash doesn't have. An NBA Finals MVP. Obviously, Jason Kidd won an NBA championship later in his career as a role player with the Dallas Mavericks, but he never led a team to a championship. This team right here is Chris Paul's team. I know Devin Booker is arguably the best player on the team right now, but a lot of people point to Chris Paul's leadership, his ability to make teammates better, and let's be real. The Phoenix Suns were not a great team until they acquired Chris Paul. Could they have made the playoffs without Chris Paul? It's possible, but would they be in the finals without Chris Paul? I highly doubt that, okay? And like I said, if Chris Paul wins a championship, you can at least solidify him potentially as a top 5 point guard of all time. Some people still might disagree with you, and I might be in that category still because I think Chris Paul, if I were to choose right now between him being overrated or underrated as a player, as far as where he ranks among the all-time greats, I say he's a little bit overrated. Chris Paul never was, the most dominant guy of his era. He was maybe a top 5 player for a couple of seasons, but not a whole lot of seasons. But bottom line, Chris Paul's a great player, and he definitely move up my all-time list if he wins a championship. And see, when you win a title, you forget a lot of the shortcomings of a player, okay? When a player wins a championship, I should say, you sort of forget about the blemishes on their resume in the playoffs. Kevin Durant won 2 titles in Golden State. People all of a sudden were quietly forgetting they blew a 3-1 lead to the Golden State Warriors the year before he got there, There were some series versus San Antonio where, he was very good for the series but didn't quite close them out, LeBron James has won titles. People forget about how bad he was versus the Dallas Mavericks in 2011. When you win a championship, these things get glossed over because, you're in the moment, you're a champion, and it's great. So I think that if Chris Paul wins a championship, we'll forget about the 3-1 lead that he blew a couple of years ago versus James Harden and the Houston Rockets. We'll forget the fact that he couldn't lead the Los Angeles Clippers to an NBA championship when he had a really good roster and a pretty good head coach in Doc Rivers year in and year out. Okay, so when it comes to Chris Paul, if he wins a championship, like I said, he will forever be remembered probably the way he should be in NBA history because Chris Paul, he's the ultimate winner. He won at a high level in Oklahoma City, won at a high level in New Orleans, won at a high level in Houston, and now in his first season with the Phoenix Suns, he has a chance to lead them to a championship. I believe if Chris Paul wins a championship, he'll forever be remembered in NBA history, and we'll probably forget about some of his overall playoff blemishes, because, he'll be a champion. And if you're a champion, you deserve to be praised, no doubt about it. Rooting for Chris Paul in the finals, definitely. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juiciest Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juiciest Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.